The 250th episode of Takes on Takes is coming your way today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league. I'm a Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins.
Joe, happy National New York Yankees amend their facial hair policy to allow for beards.
I know. It's the only reason I hadn't played in the major leagues.
I've been playing grown mine out so I could play for the Yankees now.
That's what we like to see. I figured that was going to come up today. You can have a well-groomed beard, Kyle. So
no Jason Worth beards.
Obviously, a big prerequisite to being a good baseball player is having a clean-shaved face, you know. No mustaches for these guys.
With the hair blowing in your eyes when you're trying to hit, you know.
That'd be tough. That'd be tough, yeah. Really difficult. So now, you know, inevitably, you're just going to have a day of photoshopped pictures of Derek Jeter, or, you know, insert Jorge Posada. That's the name I went with. That was the number 2 Yankee, and I thought of Jorge Posada. Bernie Williams. Two Yankees off the top of your head? Name them.
Oh, it's Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez are the first two.
Alex Rodriguez is the other one you thought of? Yeah. I thought of Derek Jeter and Jorge Posada.
Mariano Rivera. Yeah. Gonna get a beard Photoshop now.
My brother saw Mariano Rivera this week in Dubai. He's got a baseball league out there. They're starting to fire up. So
that's fun.
Yeah, him and Robinson Cano. Cano actually, I think, is a manager and a player.
Former New York Yankee as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
I like how Bernie Williams was also like very unfortunately high up on your list too. Like we could have done like Roger Clemens,
Paul O'Neill, you know, Chuck Knobloch. These are my guys.
Who was the ball guy that David Wells threw the no-hitter?
Yeah.
Was that a perfect game or a no-hitter?
You know, I'm not going to get caught up.
I just don't even know. Don't worry about it. Here, I got something else for us that gets us transition into football. That's not a take. Happy National Kyle Double Dips and has a big board and a mock draft due on the same day, marathon day, to you.
When are they due?
Before lunch.
I'm very concerned about that for you because I know what weekend is coming up for you. So,
well, they're due before lunch today so that they're done and I don't have to worry about them this weekend.
Yeah, because you can't worry about them this weekend.
They're gonna have to be done before I leave the house at 3:30.
So you know, big Dolphins news is going to hit Saturday. You know,
undoubtedly, there's no question. It'll probably be 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's the least convenient time because I'm hours away from a nap.
You phone me in. I'll handle that episode for you. I'll take care of it. I'll
put you on FaceTime on the TV. All right, kids.
All right. Takes on Takes. 250th episode of Takes on Takes. Eric says the NFL, excuse me, the NFL should follow the NHL's lead with the Four Nations tournament and replace the Pro Bowl with a region-based bracket exhibition, Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, and Southwest.
Which team gets unequivocally stomped the easiest? Who gets California?
Well, that'd be tough. I would guess the Northwest would probably get California. The Northeast is going to struggle here.
Well, I don't know. Ohio, Pennsylvania is respectable.
Right, but
hotbed.
The Florida situation.
The DC area is getting better with football.
I'll take. Come on, you know those Florida boys, man. You know they are, Kyle.
The Florida, Texas. Who gets Texas? I guess the
Southwest.
The Southwest gets Texas, and then the Northwest gets California. Is that how we're going to divide that out?
Yeah. Okay, it's not going to happen. Football players are not going to play competitive football games that aren't NFL games, right? So cool idea. And obviously the hockey thing has been great. Man, people are talking about hockey. There's people saying this is a great game. It's been so good for the sport. Kudos to the NHL for what they're doing here. It's not going to, the NFL players are not going to do it. It's not going to happen. So
hockey's my second favorite sport now. Like I actually will watch a hockey game.
Maybe if
I
the Sabres,
I go out and
tried.
I watch a hockey game from time to time.
I've tried.
And then you get the playoffs. Like,
are you a Panthers fan? Is that official? You've been kind of,
because 2 years ago when they went and lost to the Knights, that was kind of what got
the Knights. Oh, that's the Vegas team.
Yeah, the Vegas team won. That playoff run and like being a part of that with obviously a large portion of my following base is South Florida sports fans because the Locked On Dolphins and such. Following along with them and watching the games and conversing with a bunch of them, it became like a very So I'd like to consider myself not a bandwagon because they didn't win the cup the year that I got into it, but then obviously they won the cup last year, so it makes it a little easier to like jump in and be like, yeah, cool, this is fun.
Hear you. Well, the Sabres are the worst team in hockey.
It's not you alleged this last time we talked about hockey, and it's still statistically not true.
The fourth worst record in the league, and they haven't made the playoffs. So, like, it's the biggest drought in professional sports of playoffs.
It's
so
fine. They're not the worst team in the league this year.
Okay,
they're not the worst team in the league.
Ellie says there are no offensive linemen worthy of going top 10 in this year's draft. Says Campbell, Membao, and Banks are all future guards. Simmons is injured. He had another take that said that Josh Simmons is the only offensive line prospect that's worth a top 10 pick. So where are you at on this?
I have Josh Simmons ranked 6th on my board, but I don't adjust for injury, right? And this is a torn patellar tendon for Josh Simmons, is what's been reported as his injury, which is unsettling, right? This is a big week for him coming up with the combine, but that happened in October. So where are you at in your recovery in that regard? And I don't think it's a coincidence that you see him clinging on in the back 8 of a lot of mock drafts, despite how good the tape was, but it was only a 6-game sample size of playing really good football. I have Will Campbell 7, but I do have him as a guard. If you want to get into the positional value there, it's like, I don't think Ashton Genty's going to go 3 either, but that's where I have him on my board.
Right.
As you want to do the same thing with Will Campbell, I totally get it. My next offensive lineman after that comes at 15 with Josh Connerly. So I don't think Ellie's, and then I have Armand Membu at 16. So I don't think Ellie's too far off here.
Yeah, I have, man, they're all close for me. Will Campbell, Josh Simmons, Membao, Connerly, Booker's not too far down. They're close, right in that 10 to like 18 range. So
I don't think you have the slam dunk name that you usually like Paris Johnson or something like that.
And I think it's the take says worthy of going top 10. I think we will predict at least one goes, but I don't know. I wouldn't. I think there's teams that wouldn't make sense for. I'd be fine with it. James says this: the Bills need multiple dudes on the defensive line and not just one dude on the D line. So while the trade for Garrett or Crosby stuff is fun, they need the picks and cap space to add multiple guys instead of just one big name guy.
Are the Bills really in a hard way with cap space?
No, not at all.
They were last year and they made the transition, and now they're not.
Yeah, they're like 11 over, but like you can blink your eye and get $60 million. So normal moves. I said to my Discord yesterday, I said, this is going to be unpopular, but everyone's romanticizing about the Eagles, right? Like the Eagles did the things to the Chiefs that the Bills have been trying to do, and it's because they have a great defensive line, right? 4-man rush and all that. I think this is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit about the Eagles. They don't have Myles Garrett or Max Crosby either. They just have 7 or 8 guys that are really good, that are quality players. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where if the Bills don't go get a Crosby or a Garrett, I think that's what you tell yourself. And this is how I kind of compared it. Maybe it's not completely fair. The Bills' best 2 defensive linemen are Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver. Jalen Carter's a better player than Ed Oliver. I'd say that's pretty comfortable. That's kind of like their signature guy. But the reality is the Eagles just have like 7 or 8 guys that are like in that tier as opposed to the cornerstone guys. So I think there's some truth to what James is saying, and that'll certainly be my coping mechanism if the Bills don't get one of those guys.
What do you think's harder? Do you think it's harder to get 7 or 8 guys that are the caliber that Philly got, or is it harder to give the capital to go get a guy like a Myles Garrett?
That's exactly the debate that we had in the Discord, and I said I think it's harder to have the depth. I think it's harder to have 7 or 8 great ones as opposed to just – I mean, some of these some of these guys they stumble into them. TJ Watt's a late first round pick. Crosby's a 5. Myles Garrett's a number 1 overall player. That's not hard. Trey Hendrickson, he went was he like a 4th round pick?
Third or 4th round pick by the Saints.
I remember at the time I was like, I think that's a better pick than Marcus Davenport. And hi, here we are. So listen, yeah, I think having that type of depth is more meaningful and harder to get.
He went 103 overall in the 3rd round in the compensatory range. Trey Hendrickson did.
Baller, man. All right, we got a bunch to get to. The next one is going to be about Kenneth Grant, and if you think he's a top 10 pick. So think about that. We'll be right back. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game more exciting, and whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We got
Jim says Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, Michigan, gets drafted in the top 10 of round 1.
I think this is going to happen on my next mock. I mean, 340 pounds, moves the way he does. We just got done talking about the trenches on the other side of the ball, has some guys with some incomplete profiles. Some of the other guys have injury questions that are what I have ranked in this similar stratosphere. I have him ranked 11th. If you told me he went 7 to the Jets.
Jets are the team I think that would do it.
I think Carolina could be in that conversation with their needs on defense. I certainly wouldn't dismiss New Orleans.
I think it's unlikely, but it's not crazy.
Higher. Yeah, I think that back 3-4 picks, there's a couple teams that could be argued.
BPA Scout says, respectfully, you two have not been the most optimistic about Caleb Williams' fit with Ben Johnson and the overall outlook of the Bears under Johnson. The take is that in the next 2 years, Chicago wins at least 20 games combined, and Caleb breaks 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and at least one of those 4 years.
I'm going to fade this on the first, just based off the first portion of it, based off where this division is at. Average 10 wins a season in this division with Green Bay and Detroit and Minnesota, with those teams being further out in front. I just think a lot has to go right for a team that I think needs to invest dramatically on the offensive line. I think Darnell Wright's the only guy that you feel good about being a starter long-term there. There's a new offensive install that's going on with a quarterback that, going back to the guy who played really well with Lincoln Riley, has to be reined in a little bit. So I'm going to fade it off that alone.
Yeah, listen, I've heard a lot from Bears fans, and I am a Bills fan. I lived through the Josh Allen story, okay? And I am not telling anybody that I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. I am acknowledging that I need to see him run an offense with efficiency at some point for me to believe that it's going to come together. The talent is undeniable. Anybody can look at Caleb Williams and realize that he's got a ton of physical ability. But you got to be able to run an offense. And there's been not enough evidence of that. And is Ben Johnson a great coach to unlock that? Sure. But there's still a moment when a ball is snapped and a player is going to do what they do. And until I see consistency of running an offense, I'm going to be a little cautious. So, yeah, maybe it comes together. And in a couple of years, you can dunk all over me. But I'm not saying that he can't do it. I'm saying that, let's be honest, he's got to run an offense at some point at a level of efficiency that's conducive to winning football.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm freaking saying. And, acknowledge that. I wrote an article during Josh Allen's rookie season. Kyle, you know this. I wrote an article that said Josh Allen's the worst part of the Buffalo Bills offense. He makes a bad supporting cast worse. I'm not afraid to admit that in that moment. And it was absolutely true. He got better. Caleb Williams can get better too. But let's not act like there's not concerns. That's all I'm asking for. Let's be honest. And I know the fan goggles are thick. I know he's your number one overall quarterback. You love him. You want him to be great. I get it. I understand every bit of that. But he's still got to do it. Until he does it, I'm going to take a moment to be cautious about it. Draft guy Jared says this.
Well, I'll let you have your moment in sun.
Listen, dude, it's been really ridiculous.
Joe gets fired up.
It's been really ridiculous. You know what I mean? You lived it with Tua.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's your guy. You're protective of it. I get it. You see it differently. But he's got to run the offense.
Hey, I made the hater list for Tua.
They're great.
I'm just trying to be honest about the guy. And half the people like what you have to say when you're being honest and it's good. And then half the people like what you say when you're being honest and it's bad. And when it's fresh and there is so much unknown around this young player that obviously is very highly regarded, everybody wants it to be successful. So nobody wants to open their mind to the consideration that he might be a part of the problem, even if he is a part of the problem, and there's ways for him to get better. Yeah. Right. And then that makes if there's constructive criticism or feedback, that becomes very live wire, one touch the live wire type situation.
Dude, we got a take sent in that didn't make the cut, but I guess it's about to make the cut.
It said, here we go.
It said Jalen Hurts. It said that half the starting quarterbacks in the NFL could have led the Eagles to the Super Bowl this year. Come on. And listen, I think I've been critical of Jalen Hurts. He's deserved that criticism. The last year and a half of Jalen Hurts has been struggling. He also deserves praise for, in the biggest moment, playing his best football. Both things can be true. There doesn't have to be an apology for him. There doesn't have to be a marching parade of dunking on people that were concerned about Jalen Hurts. He earned that. He also earns the praise for coming up and showing out in a big way in a big moment.
Did you see his speech to the team before the Super Bowl?
I did not.
I don't know where it was documented, but I saw it came across my timeline. And he talked about how the last time they were at the Super Bowl, it changed his life. And he kind of joked and was like, I played well and didn't get benched, referring to the national championship game when they wanted Alabama and he got benched for Tua.
Mm-hmm.
But we lost. And he talked about, thinking about what he was going to do with the next opportunity that he had to get back into this situation. And it's the part of Jalen Hurts that makes me want to say, no, I don't think half the quarterbacks in the league would have won, because it's the person element and leader element within that environment, especially when your receivers are reading books on the sideline, your coach is screaming at fans, sometimes his own fans. There was a lot of contentious moments throughout this season. And if you don't have a leader at the middle of that, like Jalen Hurts, how does that season unfold for you? Yeah. And because of that, I would fade the take that if you look
it's not close, Kyle.
The Madden ratings and said, the top 16 QBs you could put on that roster would be good enough on Madden to win the Super Bowl. But the reality is it is a human being portion of this as well that is not seen unless somebody has a camera and documents it and shares Jalen Hurts' speech to the team before the Super Bowl.
Not even close to half the quarterbacks could have done it. Draft guy Jared says Tyreek Williams, that's a defensive tackle from Ohio State.
Yes.
Is a first-round pick. This is only you. You wouldn't let me watch him this week.
Yeah, I think he is what he is. He's a very stout run defender with plus athleticism for his size. But he's 327 pounds. I don't really think there's a lot of pass rush appeal there. I have him 52nd on my board. I have a firm 2 on him. If you told me the Chiefs drafted him at 31 because they have one defensive tackle under contract, I would get it. If you told me that some of the other teams on the back end, the back 4, 5, 6 picks, maybe as high as Minnesota at 24 if they decide to go with another interior defensive lineman. If they chose to take him with his profile as a run defender and a really good gap control type of player, I would get it. I just don't think there's for us at this stage, for you getting exposures to players that create compelling conversations, I don't think there's going to be really compelling conversation around, he's really good sitting on line of scrimmage and controlling gaps and tackling run plays between the guards, right? That's just kind of where I'm at with Tyreek Williams.
All right. I'll get to him. I'll get to him for sure.
Get to him when you get to him.
Real quick here, August says in the vast majority of circumstances, iced coffee is better than hot coffee. I don't think I've ever seen you drink an iced coffee.
I'm down on coffee big time, regardless of hot or cold.
What's moving
coffee's
you?
fine.
What's going on there?
Well, I just found out that they have Cosmic Rainbow C4, which is not the Skittles affiliation.
Okay.
So they had Skittles, which is always taste rainbow. I think they had their partnership with like the candy companies discontinued. So it's slightly different and it's better than the
Oh wow. Okay.
It's better than the Skittles because
so it's nothing that coffee did. It didn't do anything wrong. It's that C4 is doing things right.
Why would I drink 3 cups of coffee when I can drink 1 can for the same amount of caffeine?
I don't know.
And it tastes better. And there's no calories because then I'm not going to dump any
So
sweetener.
Kyle's like, I'm not even talking about iced coffee versus hot coffee. I want to introduce a completely another element to this conversation.
Hashtag no free pub, but here we are. Gassing up the taste of rainbow.
Sponsor the pod. I'll align with Kyle real quick on this C4. Okay, we got more to get to. This is a really good idea, or at least an interesting idea about trades and whether or not you should be able to trade cap space. We'll talk about that on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us.
You can trade. You like that? The double
Kyle, I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous, and you pushed the wrong button, but then you figured it out.
Yep,
you figured that out.
Miles immediately went down to the second bumper that's a solo bumper, which I would click again, but apparently there's some automation that gets picked up in the programs we update the videos to, so I'm not gonna do it and mess it up. But yeah, it just went right from one to the other.
I almost said
the same one twice.
I almost said, Kyle, it's a double insert as part of the ad read, but you did it.
You should have said it while it was the black screen transitioning. Double insert, double insert, double insert.
Well, I don't think we're not muted. They don't automatically mute the mics during that, so we got to be careful.
Right. So you would have heard
it. All right. Charles says this. Teams should be allowed to trade cap space for picks or players. It would help rebuild teams. And he mentions the Patriots leverage their positive cap situation for picks. It would help facilitate trades with dead cap involved like Myles Garrett.
So you're asking to move cash considerations. This happens sometimes because teams will pay a player's bonus and then trade him.
Right, but like legitimately, if the Patriots have 100 and I don't know, 50
I've seen people say this is a good thing, and here's a hot take: it's not a good thing to have $120 million in cap space. Which means you're not paying anybody. You don't have any talent on your roster.
Right. But would you like for them to be able to offer that in a trade?
No.
You don't think it should happen?
No.
Okay. Let's lead right into this other take from Ball Footers, who says annual cap increases from new TV streaming deals will make it harder for bad teams to become competitive. Losing teams' advantage of more cap space is diminished when good teams can backload contracts and sign multiple high-value free agents while banking on cap increases.
Yeah, but how many teams really do that?
Don't you think that it's a little bit new? Like maybe more teams will. You saw the Eagles absolutely do it.
Yeah, but then I don't know. I look at San Francisco, right? And San Francisco and Miami to a little bit lesser degree this year, but San Francisco's been good for longer. You get to a point, everybody starts holding their hand out. It's all right, my turn, right? Everybody wants a new contract. Everybody in San Francisco wanted a new contract. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle, Christian Wilkins, Robert Hunt, like all those names were names that either got or required new contracts from the team last offseason. Several of them holding out in the process. You can only pay everybody for so long. And as the costs continue to rise, the teams that have allocated, maybe not the best team, but went about acquiring talent, everybody's going to, with the growth in the cap and the growth in salaries and top salaries, Jamar Chase is going to get $40 million this year wide receiver. You don't think there's some other wide receiver out there that just signed a deal for 28 that's going to get a little pissed off and want to get a contract readjustment? And when that happens, you're going to probably give it to him, and then you're not going to be able to pay somebody else. I think it's going to be the same thing over and over again.
Kyle, I don't think that's – I'll be honest with you. I don't think that's fair by the players. I don't. the cap has gone up the last 2 years by $53 million. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that you're big on this, but I've been going crazy on this, on Locked On Bills about, we got to stop talking about API. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Some deal that some other guy signed in 2021 when the cap was $70 less million. It's not the same environment. You've got to start looking at these things as a percentage of cap. But also, I don't think it's fair for a player to look at it that way. I think at some point you gotta play your part of the deal to a certain extent until it becomes logical for an extension to happen. You don't sign a 5-year, $120 million deal and then 2 years into it be like, no, these other guys have gotten paid. Well, then don't sign the 5-year deal. Be aware of that.
Sign a 3-year deal, and then you'd be in a position after 2 years to sign a new contract because you'd be going into a contract year.
Right. And that there's concessions and gambles that everybody has to take on both sides of that. But I think that's unfair to leverage that when there's that many years left in your deal. Here's
the hard thing with that. There's some teams, and I get it both ways, and I don't know that there's a good answer. But is it better to, as a team, fundamentally hold to your position, know that you have a player under contract, know they're probably going to skip training camp, know that they're not going to be ready for the start of the season? You're going to be doing a disservice to the entire team by this essential player that you have who's not happy. Might be a malcontent because he didn't get the contract adjustment that he wanted, and he didn't participate in training camp, and now he's got to be cold going into the season, and you're playing for keeps. Is it better to do that, or is it better to bend to your position and appease the player by giving them the contract adjustment? Because well-paid players and well-compensated players are happy players, and they're players that show up on time and come to meetings and participate in training. Like I don't know what the answer there is, but I've seen that cut on both sides, and it's been teams 100%. Both ways.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Jets and the Hassan Reddick deal is exactly what you're talking about. I think Miami's a good example of what you're talking about as well. Doesn't this come back to, though, at some point, like when you hear GMs talk about, we got to find the right people, the right fit, the right DNA, the right culture. So, like, the more that you prioritize that, the less likely you're going to be in positions where you're being held hostage, or you have to hold somebody hostage, and you avoid those circumstances.
Yeah, but that's the line you have to walk between team building and talent allocation. And I think there's a lot of teams that allocate talent without enough consideration to the building of the team. And that is the result that you get. And there's been a couple of stops across the league the last couple of years that has just swelled to a point where you lose seasons with a lot of talent because people are not focused on the right things that are conducive to winning a championship.
And in defense of the players, I get the urgency, right? You've got a short period of your life to play football and maximize on earnings potential to create, obviously, generational wealth. Like, this is your chance to do it. Do everything you can to get it. But
don't sign 5-year contracts.
Exactly. If that's your goal,
don't sign 5-year contracts.
Then, yeah, exactly.
Now, if you're a quarterback and you're an elite player and you're happy with where you're at and you have faith and you're going to be the centerpiece of everything that you're doing, and you know you're going to get adjustments along the way, or they're going to be willing to move cash forward out of prior deals to keep your pay competitive, if there's an understanding there with that player. But I think it's easier to have that kind of understanding with a singular player or a handful of players than it is to have half dozen guys on your roster who sign 4 or 5-year deals. Although, I don't know, like Tyreek Hill signed a 3-year extension and needed an adjustment anyway.
Right. I'm sitting here wondering, how long is Josh Allen going to be happy being the 14th highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
It's a great question. You're hearing some rumblings about Matthew Stafford not being happy with his compensation, and he is grossly underpaid.
Man, I saw a tweet this week from Sosa, who was going in on Matthew Stafford. He's like, this guy won the Super Bowl throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp, Ben Skoranek, whoever, Cam Akers was a running back. Oh no, the ghost of Eldo. It's like, I mean, that's a pretty freaking good point, like, geez.
Yeah.
Okay. We are, this is a pro Matthew Stafford podcast. The Sports Nut says this: 2 tight ends will be drafted before the second wide receiver comes off the board.
Who gave this take?
Sports Nut. Can't say his new. I'm not going to say his new, or Well, it's been his Twitter name for a while now, but we know he's a sports nut.
I don't know if this is true, but I think this is a really fascinating take.
So Warren and Loveland before whatever combination of two receivers.
Hold on.
In DJ's mock draft, this happened that we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, hold on. What if Tyler Warren goes to the Jets?
Which that seems like the hot thing.
If Tyler Warren goes to the Jets, is there a chance we get 2 tight ends before we get the first wide receiver?
Oh, you want to take it another level, huh?
Yeah. I'm just wondering out loud here.
I think very highly of like Loveland goes to the Colts. What number is that?
Right. That's 14.
So, and then your first receiver comes after that?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you absolutely agree that the second tight end comes off the board.
I don't think it's necessarily going to be true. What does Denver do? Does Arizona or Atlanta go wide receiver? Does Dallas go wide receiver? If Tet McMillan does go in the top 10, like I could see it cutting either way, but I don't think this is like a slam dunk shoe in 2 wide receivers are going to go before 2 tight ends by any means.
Well, the take is that 2 tight ends go before 2 receivers.
Right. I'm saying I think this is a very possible outcome.
Mock draft Hall of Famer says Emeka Egbuka and Matthew Golden are both drafted before Luther Burden and Tet McMillan. Right? You just had the same. If you watch the video of what Kyle just went through, that's exactly what I did when I read it.
It's the kombucha tea lady. Where right.
It's 100% that.
So it's Golden and Egbuka before Burden and McMillan.
Definitely Burden. Like I agree on Burden.
Yeah, I would like a little bit more route running diversity than what Burden has. He's a good player. He's a really good player.
It's the 2 route runners versus not as good route runners.
Great. I'll say no, but I want to say yes. All
right.
That it?
Well, there is one more, but I know we can't go over time. We get yelled at.
Give it to me.
Steven's been trying, I think, for weeks on this one. Xavier Restrepo will be a top 3 most productive wide receiver in the NFL among this class. Excellent route running, strong hands, enough speed and agility that will allow him to have a Wes Welker, Jarvis Landry type career.
Oh, you can't throw Wes Welker out there. Don't throw that comp around lightly. Is this as a rookie or is this like for
when it's all said and done for this class? He'll be
Gotta know where he lands.
You're open to it though.
He can block his rear end off, so he's going to stay on the field.
It's helpful.
11 personnel teams will know they're going to be able to run the ball 11 personnel with Xavier Restrepo on the field. So that's going to help big time. All right, that's going to do it for us here today. Locked on NFL Scouting, Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys as always for checking out the show. We are going to get out of here before we get in trouble with the powers that be. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back again on Monday. NFL Combine next week. We're looking forward to it. See you then.